police said, okay, we'll be there soon, and police didn't bother getting there in time, and police were there much, much later because they simply didn't give a damn.
Hmm. Well, a lot of the indigenous nations do have their own police force, but it's really small.
Right,
Okay,
and they're not
and
they are not
underfunded.
all, and
If
they're
it's if it's
and
if
Matt,
it's like
my
uh,
point was that they're not allowed to prosecute non-indigenous peoples, and these were non-indigenous who were not even supposed to be in that area.
hmm, um, well, there's two things. One, as a security force, they can escort them from the property.
Hmm.
Okay, but to back themselves up like any security force, they have to call the non-indigenous police. That's where the breakdown was.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, what they call tribal police, another racist term,
Hmm.
uh, would have to contact the local PD and says, "Hey, we're out here. We need some backup," and then it's up to them to back them up.
Hmm.
Uh,
Hmm.
Even though, as tribal police, they are fully empowered, they are also dependent on the non-indigenous government to file charges. Okay. When a police officer arrests you, they file charges with uh, whatever government has jurisdiction. Okay, if it's the PD, they file it with the city's attorney general. If it's the county sheriffs, they file it with the county's attorney general. But who say I got picked up on the reservation for making a fool of myself up at San Manuel? Okay,
Hmm.
and it wasn't just me; it was me and 50 of my closest buddies. Okay, making a ruckus up there.
Hmm.
Who they going to call? Well, they got to call somebody because somebody's got to make the arrest. And the indigenous nations in the U.S. don't have an attorney general. They don't have a lot of things. They don't have diplomatic representation. There's a lot of things they just don't have. And one of those is attorneys general to prosecute cases brought by their officers. Their officers have to go next door to the non-indigenous attorney general. So, if me and my 50 closest buddies are up there making a ruckus and it's too much for them to handle, they got to call San Bernardino PD, which can refer the cases to the San Bernardino DA's office. Okay. Or not. Or not.
Hmm. Hmm.
Uh, because in the eyes of the non-indigenous governments, they're just a security force. They're just rent-a-cops. And so that has to change to where they have those accoutrements of sovereignty, okay, where they have their own diplomatic representations, where they have their own court system, they have their own indigenous legal code, and they have their officers are empowered to enforce it.
Hmm.
They can arrest you and refer the case to their DA. Okay, we don't have that now. Again, they're on lockdown from the BIA,
Hmm.
which prevents them from doing a lot of things. When you go to work up there at the casino, I found this out, you are regulated by a federal agency. Okay. They don't, the, the tribal government doesn't really have the means to regulate you as an employee at a casino. The casino regulations on employment are written by the feds. So there's a lot of things they don't have because they're still part of the United States.
Right,
We,
right.
you know, we have a chance to open a new chapter in our relations with them as
In
an
order
independent
to
republic.
repair relations
Yeah, in
and
order to repair relations.
make things actually fair where they weren't fair before.
Right. Well, again, it would be us in California in general and them as sovereign independent nations
Hmm.
recovering our sovereignty jointly.
Right, right.
Um, and so that would make us as Palm Springs and Cathedral City are plurinational cities, that would make California a plurinational republic. This was the goal of Evo Morales, who himself is indigenous and led a powerful indigenous movement. And they've been struggling over that ever since in Bolivia.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, this is something that has been popping up since 1994, when the original Article 27 of the Mexican Constitution was revoked 2 years after the 500th anniversary of Columbus. Ironically enough, they revoked the original Article 27, which prevented the alienation not just of indigenous land, but any of the land of the ejidos, which are like reservations, but for Mexican farmers generally.
Mm-hmm. Now, how has it worked in Bolivia? You mentioned Bolivia a minute ago. How has
Like I say, it's been a struggle. I
uh-huh.
looked at the Bolivian Constitution of the Plurinational State of Bolivia,
Mm-hmm.
and the indigenous, their legislature has over 100 deputies to it, and they have reserved about 7. The rest they have to contest.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
They
Mm-hmm.
have 7 reserved. They have, certain reserved seats for various groups in Bolivia, but they're quite small. And the rest they have to contest with non-indigenous folks.
What cultural, what social, so, excuse me, what social and cultural successes has it brought about?
Well, okay, let me tell you about Bolivia before and after the socialist movement there, which is the only socialist movement in the world to use a blue flag because the indigenous people like it. Okay. And so before Morales and the MAR became the governing authorities of Bolivia, Bolivia was a notorious basket case. Okay, and the sorts of things that are being done to the Venezuelan currency, which they recently replaced again, were done to the Bolivian currency constantly. They were having to, chop 3 zeros off and print out new bills, and then those would be to where you had to bring in wheelbarrows to buy a postage stamp, like in, interwar Germany in the bad old days. That kept happening in Bolivia. They were desperately dirt poor.
Mm-hmm.
And they've been, since the advent of MAR, they have been climbing out of that, more fairly distributing their resources, some through, increases in the wage rates and creating opportunities, especially in the public sector. Let me tell you about a little illustration I saw. It was of a bullet train. Okay, a bullet train like they're trying to build here. And it's, one of those super sleek Japanese bullet trains. I'm like, where is this? Is it Japan? No, man. This is Bolivia. There's Evo Morales right there standing next to it. Okay, it's not a huge haul, but, if they was to build that between Bolivia and the former Bolivian lands that were taken by Chile, then they wouldn't have to risk their lives and limbs clambering over the Bolivian highway of death. Okay, aptly named. It's the only way to get from Bolivia to their former lands that are now northern Chile, and it's oh my God, I'm terrified of heights, and I wouldn't do it in a month of Sundays. People, buses full of people fall over it and they die. Okay, if they were to be able to tunnel underneath the Andes for that stretch, wouldn't have to do that no more. Okay. As it is, either you go over the Bolivian highway of death or you fly over the Andes. Okay. Which, it's doable, but it's the only surface connection between Bolivia and the former lands that were Bolivia's seacoast that were robbed from them by Chile way back over 100 years ago. I mean, it's one of those ancient injustices that used to feature even before Morales on the spine of La Paz phone books. Bolivia tiene derecho a costa, Bolivia has the right to its seacoast. Imagine seeing that on the spine of a phone book. I did. But no, now it's the plurinational state of Bolivia. and they've been struggling for exactly how to implement that. A lot of the implementation has been done uh, at the local level. A lot of the implementation uh, has been done by Morales's party itself. So it's been a struggle. There's a part of the country that is, by and large, still inhabited by its original inhabitants, the Quechua people who built the Inca Empire. Okay, so they're no strangers to building well. Uh, they have a joke about the settlers. They say they call us Incas because our Inca was our emperor. We call it incapable, and that is to say, incapable of building a good wall. They have to use mortar and everything. They passed down our walls, with legions of Spaniard conquistadores, and then they built their churches out of them. They had a hell of a time building. We're looking at it as you learned to build a wall. Obviously you didn't. You have all this goop in it. The first big earthquake in this earthquake country, believe me, it's going to go like this, and we're just going to be laughing our asses off, and our wall's still standing after thousands of years, guys. So you call us Incas, we call you incapable, incapable of building a wall. Jeez.
All right, so are you saying that before Bolivia went plurinational, they didn't have such things as bullet trains, that life really got culturally better for them and easier after they became sort of plurinational, and now they're having an easier time building things that help them out economically and socially and otherwise, like the bullet train?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
They
So, excuse me, California, but what is taking you so long to become more plurinational? This is going to make life better for us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Again, the half that the feds are sitting on, the half of California that the feds are sitting on, is
Matt,
the preserved half, the half that
right,
hasn't been built on.
right.
Okay.
Matt, can you tell us if they've had any great successes educationally in Bolivia since becoming more plurinational?
Absolutely. Not only is literacy in Spanish increasing, literacy in Quechua is increasing. Before who would have bothered, actually printing a book in the Quechua language before?
What good does
Uh,
that do them?
and now, they're increasing literacy in their own language. This same
Uh-huh.
thing happened, for example, in Nicaragua. Okay, where the only books that were published were books in Spanish,
Okay, what
and
what
so
what good
then
does that do them besides giving them maybe a sense of pride in their own heritage?
yeah, and they got a lot to be proud of. These are the people that built Machu Picchu. They had roads, and they did everything they did without wheels and without animals to pull the things that the wheels were on, which is why they didn't invent wheels. What you going to pull it with?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And they did all this stuff by hand. It's still standing after thousands and millions of earthquakes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's still standing. This is earthquake country. The Andes, you betcha. And their stuff is still standing, and they still giggle at the Spaniard and colonial buildings that fall on every earthquake. It's like Mexico City. Okay, Mexico City was a promontory, Tenochtitlan. It was a promontory on which the Aztecs built their capital, surrounded by a lake. Okay, a big moat, if you would. First thing the Spaniards did when they, and Cortez and company went and bashed down that, they filled in the moat. And the Aztecs are looking at him and says, "What are you crazy? The first earthquake, man. Everything's going to go boom, 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 and down it goes." And that's exactly what happened in that big Mexico City earthquake that set into motion the civil society that was rebuilding because the federal government was worse than useless. The Mexican federal government was worse than useless after the big earthquake. So they did it themselves. They formed a thing called the civil society. But the Aztec wisdom of not filling in a lake and making soup that will come down the first earthquake was proven in a tragic way. The only buildings that were relatively unaffected by El Grande were the ones on the Aztec island. It's solid, it's sturdy, it's an island. Okay, the rest, down go these big skyscrapers that they, shouldn't have built there in the first place. Uh, he says as he looks at the skyscrapers that are being built in LA, his